Hello and welcome to episode 123 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast where two friends stopped arguing about movies and started working through them together. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. The season keeps on tizzin' as we give thanks for Hanks and celebrate T-Hanksgiving, our annual celebration of all things Tom Hanks. This year, we're watching Apollo 13, directed by Ron Howard from 1995. It feels like it's been a long time coming for us to watch Apollo 13, and we're always excited to rewatch 90s Hanks.
Apollo 13 was a pretty big hit, securing 9 Oscar nominations and earning over $355 million at the box office. It was another hit in Tom Hanks' epic 90s run, though he didn't end up with a third successive Best Actor nomination. Critics were mostly kind to the film, with most of the focus on Ron Howard's stellar direction. But audiences and many critics were also taken with Tom Hanks' humanizing performance of quiet leadership in a crisis. Hanks' reputation as an all-around good guy didn't start with Apollo 13, but it certainly started to cement him in audiences' minds as America's ideal everyman.
But where does Apollo 13 fit in the Hall of Hanks?
Grab a bag of astronaut ice cream, pee in a plastic bag, and keep listening.
Hey, we've got a problem here.
What did you do?
Nothing. I stirred the tanks.
Whoa. Hey.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem. We have a main bus B undervolt.
All right, so there he is, the man, the reason for the celebration.
The reason for the season.
The reason for the season, the Tom Hanks.
That's right.
In that scene, playing Jim Lovell, experienced NASA astronaut out on Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And, come on, we all know
Giving
it.
us that line. I mean, how high up would that rank in quintessential Tom Hanks lines?
Oh, I would be curious to know just even how many Oscar reels over the years of like just Hollywood.
Yeah.
What we love about Hollywood.
Include Houston, we have a problem.
It would include that.
So you're talking not just Tom Hanks lines. This is all-time movie lines.
Don't you think? It's like right up there with like, here's looking at you, kid, and we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah. Adrian.
Yeah, that's one. Frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn.
Yeah, frankly, my dear.
Frankly,
wow.
Sorry.
Woof.
We know what we're talking about. It's a movie podcast. But yeah, right up there.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Yeah, I would say that, and then right underneath that, maybe right above it.
We have a problem.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, but let's do our annual Hanksgiving.
Yeah, let's talk Hanks
process. Yeah, so of course we're giving thanks for Hanks this month.
Love this time of year.
Yeah, I do too. But this year we selected one that at the end of the last episode, I think we talked about this. We've both wanted to do for a while. Apollo 13 felt like a really important one for us to get to, and we finally did it.
Yeah. Now, why do you think No T-Hanksgiving would be complete without at least a little mention or consideration of Apollo 13?
I think, I said it a little bit in the intro, but I really think that this was the movie that sort of, he had been...
Well, why don't we talk about
the description?
Where was Hanks at this point? I mean, he had just the movie previous to this that he had done was Forrest Gump.
Just won back-to-back Oscars is where he's been.
Yeah, exactly.
Forrest Gump,
and Philadelphia before that. Yeah,
right. So obviously, bankable star, likable star, steady Eddie, like a guy. So, guy that.
And if you back it up a little bit more, you've already got things like A League of Their Own.
Right. Was just the year before that.
Right. These movies that made him a very sort of likable.
Sleepless in Seattle was in there.
It was already before this, all that, yeah.
And this one, playing a real life, this might have been the first time he played a real life character?
Well, wasn't Philadelphia. That was
Philadelphia based on a true story?
I think that was based on a true story.
Okay. But so being one of the first of those, like playing a relatively well-known figure, but also I think watching it this time, it's not a patriotic movie, but it's an American movie.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think that this one solidified that sort of like he's America's actor. I don't think he was America's dad at that point, but he was like an American icon. If he wasn't already, like Apollo 13 really just kind of stamped it.
Yeah, I think I would agree because perhaps Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Maybe it's kind of like the appetizer before the main meal. Like, he was definitely, that's an American movie because it goes basically through a couple decades of American history, but it's a fictional character. The character doesn't necessarily instill patriotism.
Right.
In the same way that Jim Lovell, even like right after this, he would do Saving Private Ryan, right? And then he became producer for things like John Adams, the miniseries, and Band of Brothers, and things that he sort of took on. I think Apollo 13 is the start of Hanks taking on this role of telling kind of American stories that you could actually be proud of, and sort of displaying an affection for American history. Yeah, that I think would keep going.
He had, and I think he produced a documentary series on the space program of sorts for HBO too. After this,
okay,
so yeah, he directed That Thing You Do After This. Like I feel like this was kind of the culmination of an unbelievable run that just made him a different entity in American cinema and in American culture.
I mean, my memory of growing up in this time, like growing up in the 90s. See, Forrest Gump to me was what really kind of made him jet into that sort of superstar echelon. Mm-hmm. You know, like Philadelphia definitely.
Back-to-back Oscars.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that movie, the populist appeal of Forrest Gump. Yeah. And then I really think from there on, it becomes, well, what's the next Tom Hanks project?
Yes.
You know, like, and Apollo 13 was like the first movie I remember being like, I'm going to see that no matter what, because it's a Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of echo you, Forrest Gump put him in that place.
Yeah.
And Apollo 13 was the
follow-up.
Worthy follow-up.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And he did it again.
Yep.
But there's also the personal side of it. I don't know if we should get into first viewings now or something, but one of the reasons I always wanted to do it was because it was one that I remember so much from my childhood. And I don't remember my first viewing, but I know we had the VHS, and I know I watched this movie a lot when I was,
you know, and you would have been like 11 to
12. Yeah. Which as I was watching it, I'm like, this is maybe weird for an 11-year-old to watch on repeat,
also
but
pretty family friendly.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
it is rated PG.
It does not surprise me that I think a lot of people own this movie because it was a reliable, safe movie to own.
Yeah, and it was a big hit. So I was rewatching this, and I hadn't forgotten anything. It was just
right there.
Yeah,
and you probably couldn't even count the number of times you've seen it.
No, I can't even estimate.
But well, when was the last time you saw it before this, though?
Probably middle school.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I do remember I did see this in the theater. I must have gone with my parents. I have a memory of being in the theater and seeing it and liking it. And also, like, I remember, you know, I would have been 12 when it came out. And I do remember feeling anxious watching it. Mm-hmm. Like, you know they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But there was just something about the storytelling of the movie where I was just like, oh, can they just catch a break?
Absolutely.
Can they just catch a break? You know? So I think that was just sort of a memory of mine of like what good storytelling can do, I guess. But
absolutely.
I think I probably watched it maybe once or twice after that on VHS. And I don't think I've seen, I don't remember the last time I saw it, but it had been a very long time. So yeah, it was fun to revisit that.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this is something we want to talk about now, but Hanks did not get a Best Actor nomination for this.
Does that bother you? I'd have to look at who else was nominated.
All right, that's what I was going to tell you. The winner was Nicolas Cage for Leaving Las Vegas.
Okay.
There was also Anthony Hopkins for Nixon, Richard Dreyfuss for Mr. Holland's Opus, Sean Penn for Dead Man Walking, and Massimo Troisi for Il Postino. And that was a posthumous nomination. Okay. I did not know that he died before. I don't know. I haven't seen Nixon.
Neither have I.
I only saw Dead Man Walking once. I saw The Postman once. I saw Leaving Las Vegas once, and Mr. Holland's Opus was actually another movie I watched a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah, I could see that. That was one that a lot of people had in their homes.
Yeah.
Is another one.
But, so I can't really speak to that. But just going off the strength of Hanks, do you think that this was an Oscar-worthy or nomination-worthy performance?
I don't know. I mean this in the most positive way.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit less like a leading performance. He kind of like sinks into the background a little bit more on this in a way that's really serviceable, I think, because he doesn't make it a movie about Jim Lovell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not really a movie about him. It's about NASA and like how everyone came together. It's definitely a Tom Hanks movie, but it's also a great ensemble movie.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes when you get these big ensembles, it's kind of hard to know, like, do they get that Best Actor nomination? I mean, aside from the classic, iconic Houston, We Have a Problem.
Yeah.
What are the bigger scenes in this where you think he's doing some really heavy lifting acting wise?
Right, like that people are going to notice.
And we talk about this a lot, like how we think sometimes the Oscars kind of award the most acting.
Yeah. It's just not an obvious choice.
Yeah, and I also wonder, like, was there a little bit of, all right.
Right.
Three, does he need 3?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost sacrilege to say on this day, but were people a little tired of Tom Hanks killing it?
But I was alive then. We weren't.
No, I wasn't.
I don't think anybody was.
Might have been. I don't think anybody was. So most of the nominations it got were technical. Set direction, sound, editing, visual effects, music. It won sound and film editing. Nominated for Best Picture. Not nominated for Best Director. Nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay.
What was it adapted from? Did Jim Lovell write a book?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 actors were nominated. Can you tell me who you think they were?
Was Ed Harris nominated?
Yep.
Okay.
Best Supporting Actor, Ed Harris. Didn't win. Kevin Spacey won for Usual Suspects.
Is it Kathleen Quinlan?
Uh-huh.
How do you say her last name? Quinlan?
I would say Quinlan, right?
Probably. This is Jim Lovell's wife, Marilyn.
Yep.
She does have a big role.
Yeah, she does. She was nominated.
But I didn't know she was nominated. Okay.
Yep, those were the 2 acting categories it was nominated in. And Best Director, so you know who he was up against.
I'm going to have a hard time thinking whoever he was up against deserved it more than Ron Howard in this case.
Winner, Mel Gibson, Braveheart. Nominee, Chris Noonan for Babe. Michael Radford for Il Postino.
I've never seen this Il Postino, The Postman. I've never seen it.
It is very good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike Figgis for Leaving Las Vegas.
I didn't like Leaving Las Vegas.
I know you didn't. Yeah.
So I need to rewatch it.
I need to rewatch it because I probably wouldn't like it as much as I think I did.
I don't know. I think it might have just been wrong day. I just was not feeling
Tim
it.
Robbins for Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, the Academy loved Dead Man Walking. I do remember
They
that.
did. They loved Dead Man Walking and Il Postino.
Because wasn't Susan Sarandon was also nominated?
And they also love actors directing. Which is, I mean, why not Ron Howard then, right?
Exactly.
You got to say.
Well, I got to say this about Apollo 13. There's a lot about it that's understated and just done extremely well in a very classic way. So that I think these are the kind of movies that they just stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Way better than some of these other movies that we're talking about. But they don't always present themselves as the best of the year, year they come out. And I think that's just the case with this movie.
Yeah.
It's just I mean, we haven't even got into how we really feel about it, but this is just a solid movie.
Yes.
Very freaking solid movie.
Yeah.
It's hard not to like it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's got some feel good elements. It's got some suspense. It's got some. It's historically accurate, and it's an amazing.
Well. And
it's taking a piece of history that is really noteworthy.
Yeah.
But I did not learn in school.
No.
At all.
No.
I didn't even know about it until I saw the trailer for the movie.
Right.
Oh, that happened? I don't even know anything about it. And then you watch the movie and you're like, holy cow, that's a crazy story. And then you read about it and you're like, and that was accurate.
Yeah. There was no
Those are
exaggeration.
the best kinds of historical movies, I feel like, are the ones that highlight something that you don't know a lot about, but you should. And it doesn't even feel the need to over dramatize it, to a degree.
Yeah. I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but I just really don't find a lot of faults with the movie at all. Does that make it 5 stars? Does it make it a perfect movie? I don't know.
I probably wouldn't go that far.
But it's a damn good movie.
Yeah, damn good movie.
And I and a lot of people tend to forget about it.
Yeah. Obviously, we both did, but I kept
forgetting about it. I think Ron Howard is a director people forget about. I think because he directs a lot. And so he doesn't, he's not batting 1,000. But you gotta put some respect on his name, because I tell you, one of my favorite movies from 2022 was a movie nobody talked about. And I think it got a theatrical release, but it got a Prime release. I think Viggo Mortensen might have gotten a nomination for it. Well, I think there was an acting nomination. But it was an unbelievable movie, 13 Lives. It was about the 13 people who were trapped in caves.
That's right. Yes.
In Thailand. Yep. And the mission to get them out. It is so gripping. And I was like, of course this is good because he nailed it with Apollo 13. Why wouldn't he nail it with this?
Yeah.
And he knows how to direct actors. He knows how to tell a story. And I think underrated, he knows either who to have build his sets or he knows how to have a good set on his movies. Because with Apollo 13, it was then the LEM module, right?
Yeah.
But then also to put it in like the vomit comet, which we can talk more about, like how they did that with the weightlessness, right? And then in 13 Lives, it was the actual underwater caves that they rebuilt.
Well, and even for Apollo 13, they rebuilt Mission Control.
Yes.
Like down to the last detail. They had people from NASA who were like consulting during the day. And I was watching one of the bonus features, and the guy from NASA was saying he was so fooled by how accurate it was that when he would leave the set, he kept thinking he had to find the elevator because the real Mission Control's on the third floor. Yeah. I do think you're right that he can tell a really good story, but he knows how to pull every trick out of his toolkit to tell that story in the most captivating way. Sometimes it is the set. Sometimes it's just the way the camera moves around that set.
Yeah.
Like if you watch those Mission Control scenes, they are not stale. They are not static.
No.
And I was watching again some of these bonus features, and they used the crane and a dolly shots a lot in these Mission Control scenes.
Right.
And what it did when you see the blending between Mission Control out to them out on the ship to his wife in the room, the camera kind of moves around these three set pieces as if it's one thing, and it's
so the
movie just kind of
out of one shot mirrors movement into the next. Yeah, I also kind of feel like Ron Howard's a similar vibe to Tom Hanks.
Good old Ron Howard.
Good old Ron Howard, like upstanding guy. Like the joke is about
and
how,
funny, like Tom Hanks is.
Yeah. But I like. What a perfect pairing is Ron Howard and Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Not the first time in Apollo 13. Because they did Splash together.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So they were...
I forgot he directed Splash.
Yeah.
But I feel like they both tend to be just like hardworking, personable, good leaders.
Yeah. People like working with them.
Which seems to be what Jim Lovell was like,
True.
So... we want to give Ron Howard his due, but we also want to make sure that we're giving thanks for Hanks here.
True. Yeah.
My first note that I wrote down when I started watching this is that this is the Tom Hanks who's burned into my brain. Like when I kind of
like the age and
picture
everything.
Tom Hanks, if you just had me to conjure, like think of Tom Hanks, I would probably think of Apollo 13 Tom Hanks. And whether that's just because I watched it so much or it's like we were saying, when Tom Hanks became Tom Hanks. I don't know.
You do get a lot of the sides of Hanks's performances in this that like you would think of as Hanks touchstones.
Yeah.
For instance, you've got sort of the like hushed monologue with a little bit of trumpet in the background. That's like, it just makes you feel, and it just makes you feel like, hey, things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
I look down there, and then in the darkness, there's this green trail. It's like a long carpet that's just laid out right beneath me, and it was the algae, right? It was that phosphorescent stuff that gets churned up in the wake of a big ship, and it was just leading me home. And now, if my cockpit lights hadn't shorted out, there's no way I'd have ever been able to see that. So, you never know what events are going to transpire to get you home.
Yeah, what sets this movie apart from, I think, like JFK is less snare. But the trumpet is still there.
There's something about that 90s movie military horn intro that's just... is that a uniquely American patriotic thing, or do you think every country that does a patriotic movie
horn and
has
snare
a little bit of trumpet?
I don't know. I think that 90s Tom Hanks is maybe the only person who can make me feel patriotic, though.
Okay, yeah. But even as far as going back to like just the different sides of Hanks you get, so there's the sort of Hanks that makes you feel comfortable and like everything's going to be okay. But then you also get, the scene where they're kind of starting to lose it in the shuttle, and you get him raising his voice a little bit, and you get the yelling Tom Hanks, which is the yelling Tom Hanks that we know and love.
Yeah,
right.
If I'm in the left-hand seat when the call comes up, I stir the tanks.
Yeah, well, tell him that.
I just asked you what the gauge is reading.
All right, we're not.
And you don't know.
All right, look, we're not doing this, gentlemen. We are not going to do this. We're not going to go bouncing off the walls for 10 minutes because we're just going to end up right back here with the same problems. trying to figure out how to stay alive.
Aquarius, this is Houston.
Are we on Vox?
No, we're not on Vox.
Yeah, Houston, this is Aquarius. Go ahead.
It's iconic when he yells. It's again, I feel like I say this I can't believe there's not a Tom Hanks impression out there. But there is nobody who does a Tom Hanks. And nobody
Ryan, it's time for you to step up.
Oh my gosh.
Get working on it.
And it's not like one of those things that everybody has a Tom Hanks. Like
right.
Everybody's got a De Niro. Like whatever it is, you've probably got a De Niro or a Pacino. Nobody's got a Hanks.
Yeah, why not?
Even though it's like, we all know that voice. But even scenes where he's like yelling, right?
Yeah.
And the tension's high. That character, and the reason he's such a good leader, and the reason those scenes don't devolve into melodrama, I think, is because Lovell is like, he's not saying you can't be mad, you can't be frustrated, but he's redirecting it like at the situation, basically. The drama of it never derails or moves away from the admiration for the teamwork and the innovation and the tenacity, because it never goes too far into blaming anybody. There's no villain in this movie.
Yeah.
There are times where people, the flight surgeon.
Well, I was going to say, for some reason, this movie's got it out for doctors.
The flight surgeon, yeah.
Like he grounds Gary Sinise's character, so he's got that. I mean,
without the measles,
which is what do you call it? Bureaucratic horseshit.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then it's like, okay, that was weird, and then they don't give it up because later they're like, that's like the mutiny they have, like is just taking off their medical stuff mutiny. So that.
Well, and also.
So doctors are no good.
That guy's like an asshole because he keeps saying they need to sleep. They gotta find sleep. Oh yeah, when he says, "Are the flowers blooming there in Houston?" He's like, "That's a negative. I do not have the measles."
And then they kind of look at the
flight surgeon.
They got to have some villain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you've got to have somebody who you got to have conflict.
But overall, I almost feel like that's bordering on comic relief.
Yes,
because you're right. There really isn't a villain in this movie.
Well, I think they're like some of the NASA higher ups, Deke and that other guy. They just don't have as much faith as everybody else.
Right.
Like they seem to be pretty willing to tell people, yeah, this isn't going to go well.
Well, yeah. I mean, if anything, the enemy is cynicism in here or doubt.
Yeah.
Deke is the example. And then who's the other guy that's like talking to the press and he's trying to say that like.
Yeah, there's like a lawyer kind of character.
Yeah. And those characters don't come off looking too good.
No. But you're right that the villain is cynicism. It's not those guys. The villain is time, you know.
Right.
The villain is the elements.
Carbon dioxide.
Right.
Yeah.
Even when in the voiceover at the end explained the mistake had been made 2 years before I even signed on to do this flight. Like it was a thing that happened, basically. And the point is people buckled down and made it work. And it really is an inspiring movie.
It really is. I mean, it just feels kind of like a breath of fresh air to watch something where this is just smart people putting their heads together and solving problems.
And math saving lives.
Yeah. And people doing their job.
Yep.
And, I actually thought this was a really good movie to watch right after we had watched Godzilla -1 because it was a very similar kind of ethic to it, which was, we've got this problem.
Yeah.
We all need to work together. Here's some smart people, and we're going to do it. And again, it's a movie that affirms life.
Yeah.
Like the achievement here was saving people's lives. It wasn't even getting on the moon.
Right.
Like it's a movie about a failure that somehow turned into this huge triumph. These guys' lives were in danger, and there were so many things stacked against them coming back to Earth alive.
Yeah.
And you could only rely on your intellect, science, math,
your training, your dedication.
Yeah. And also just like an appreciation for like procedure and process.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you don't innovate and evolve, but it means that you always put the same amount of work, dedication, and thought into it, regardless of the situation.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's hard not to watch Apollo 13 and kind of have a little bit of pride in America. Because we did that.
Absolutely.
We built an organization like NASA that could solve these problems. The whole space race to me is insane.
Yeah.
Because let's take it back to like the first astronauts that just decide to go out into outer space.
Yeah.
You don't really know what's going to happen. Like, how would you have any clue? We've got no prior experience to tell us anything about this, but we've got science and we've got math.
Yeah.
And then like Apollo 8, which Jim Lovell was on, by the way. So this was his second time going to the moon. So when he says, I've seen it before, like it's kind of a nod to his previous mission.
Right.
But even that, like, space is huge.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you shoot this rocket, this little tiny pebble of a thing, at the moon close enough to where it just like gets into the right orbit around it?
Yeah, but not so close it gets pulled in, and just based on the movement of the moon, like it's crazy.
Yeah, but we did it.
And there are a couple scenes, or one scene in particular, where they just pull out their slide rules and their pencils and they figure out, like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Yeah, that should work. Let's give it a shot. And it works.
I will say, let's talk about that part of the movie, because that is something this time around that I really appreciated. Was they don't shy away from a lot of like long periods of just like technical language back and forth. And I feel like the combination of Ron Howard knowing what to photograph,
right,
for you to understand. You don't need to understand what the numbers are. You just need to understand they're crunching them.
Yep.
You don't really know exactly what's going on, but you're hanging with it just enough, and then it gives you the line that you need to understand it. So it's like 2-3 minutes of technical jargon, and then all of a sudden, I think it's Ed Harris's character just saying, "We're going to use the LEM like a lifeboat," and you're like, "Boom,
okay,
got
thank
it,
you. Got it.
Yes,
that's what I thought you were saying." But it helps that you confirmed it. Or like when they have to move the CO2 scrubbers. I'm sure when they got in that room, they didn't say like, we got to make this fit this, but like, and did they just literally dump all that stuff on the table? Maybe they did. That's the spirit of it.
Yeah.
They said, we've got this much to work with. We know we need to fit this into this. Like, let's get to work. And I don't know how scrubbers work or anything like that, but when they walk down the hallway with it, I'm like, they got it.
Yeah. It gives you a chance to just kind of marvel at people who are doing work that you don't understand. I think we talked about this a little bit with Oppenheimer too.
Yes.
Where it's just it's just these movies that can get excited about smart people.
Yeah, right. Well, I think this movie's exposition is incredible because they find natural ways to express information. So you could have a bunch of scenes where someone pulls Gene aside and said, "Gene, when you're looking at this," like, there's no reason anybody would explain it to Gene, right?
Yeah.
Like, Gene knows it.
Yeah. Gene is Ed Harris's character. Mission Control.
The Mission Control. Yeah, he's the commander of Mission Control. He knows how tight the window is for reentry, but then they use TV footage of people speculating. So all of like the worry and all of the things that we need to know, how could this go wrong? There would be no natural reason for Mission Control to be talking about that because they know that. They know all that stuff. That's how they know to make a solution. They know all of the problems. So none of them would be talking about it. But that is what the media would be talking about.
Exactly.
Right? And so there's one, a very realistic feel of that. But two, maybe a little bit of commentary as far as like the real incredible stuff was happening behind the scenes. And it was all solution based.
Yeah.
What everybody was talking about, because they love the drama and the danger, was everything that could go wrong. And then that's where Marion's story has so much weight, where she is just sitting there. She can hear the back and forth on the radio, but she doesn't hear anything about the solutions or anything that's going on. And all she hears all day on the news is all of the ways that her husband could die. Right.
The movie points out that the media didn't care about this until there was a problem.
Yeah.
The moon landing had become a boring thing to America.
Routine.
Well, I thought one smart piece of exposition was just Jim Lovell talking to his son.
Yes, exactly.
It's a tender father-son moment, but it's also like explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Me and the audience,
yeah. But then that also gave one of the most heartbreaking moments in the movie when she says something broke on
was it the door?
Daddy's ship, and he says, was it the door? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, the other one was how they let us know where they are, and that's Ed Harris updating that, like,
the chalkboard. Yes.
Right?
And I love that it's just a chalkboard and that you actually watch him draw it.
Yeah. Well, and that the projector breaks.
Yeah.
Like just those little moments, like we are at our most uncertain, and then they add that little joke of like this projector doesn't work.
Yes, yeah.
And he just pushes it aside and puts the thing up, which is just sort of like a microcosm. All right, we're moving on.
And it's such a telling thing for that character. This is someone where
that's exposition, right?
He gets angry about it, but he's not going to let it stop him. Nothing is insurmountable. I think
he pushes it away, and he doesn't like. But like another thing too, he doesn't yell at anybody for it, right?
Yeah,
like he just pushes it away and like, all right, to the blackboard. You know,
I've always loved Ed Harris, and this is a top-notch Ed Harris performance.
Absolutely.
I feel like Ed Harris's whole demeanor of Gene throughout the entire movie, I think, is such a great anchor.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to have a frozen command module up there. In a couple days, we're going to have to power it up using nothing but the re-entry batteries.
Never been tried before. Hell, we've never even simulated it before, Gene.
Well, we're going to have to figure it out. I want people in our simulators, working re-entry scenarios. I want you guys to find every engineer who designed every switch, every circuit, every transistor, and every light bulb that's up there. Then I want you to talk to the guy in the assembly line who actually built the thing. Find out how to squeeze every amp out of both of these goddamn machines. I want this marked all the way back to Earth with time to spare. We never lost an American in space. We're sure as hell not going to lose one on my watch. Failure is not an option.
I should have done more research into the visual effects, because there are some things that they do that I just can't believe computer graphics were up to the task. Some things you could kind of tell, like, all right, that was, but some of those shots of the launch and just the rockets moving and everything, like, I don't know how they got those shots.
Yeah, I mean, there was CGI, but it wasn't as much as you might think.
No.
I did watch some of the like special features on how they shot some of the launch scenes, and it was a lot of like blending of different things.
Yeah.
But they used stock footage as their inspiration. That was their initial idea, was just to use the actual footage and not actually shoot it themselves.
Yeah.
But then they realized that when you started putting all those shots together, the stock footage, there was just varying qualities to it. And so it just had this effect that they didn't want. They decided they were going to have to reenact the whole launch, basically.
Wow.
But they did it with like just really good models, well lit. And so you have like the actual rocket itself coming off the pad is just a model. And then that's ice that's coming off, the white flecks. And that was like a touch where they were talking about like there's these things that you don't really notice happen during a launch unless you actually like look really closely. And one of them is that there's actually ice that forms on the outside of a rocket ship, and then it breaks away as it takes off, I guess.
Interesting.
That was CGI. But then the actual like blast itself, the fire initially, that was just actual fire.
But
like
they filmed and then composited with the shot.
Yeah. So it's a really good blend of, you know, we talked about this with Godzilla -1, like just knowing like where you're going to kind of put your CGI and then just blending it really well with your practical effects. I do think there's like seconds that look a little dated.
Yeah.
Like seconds here and there.
Right.
But overall, it's still convincing.
I agree. And then one of the other things is, how did they get the weightlessness thing? That was
that is crazy.
The vomit comet, which is nuts. So if you don't know, there's this plane that they use to train astronauts.
NASA uses, Yeah,
NASA to get people used to weightlessness, which it just flies in parabolas. And on the way down, people are weightless for 25 seconds. And so they just shot the movie 25 seconds at a time. And sometimes stuff flew in front of the camera and they had to redo it, or the camera moved, like started floating away. Or I couldn't imagine being the cameraman who had to keep going from this camera weighs nothing to this camera weighs as much as a camera.
I watched some of the special features. And so initially, they were not planning on actually shooting those scenes in that. They just wanted to get the actors familiar with weightlessness so that they could later act it
simulate
out
it,
and simulate it. But then like Ron Howard was like thinking like, you know, but with wires and everything, it's just not going to be as convincing. And then so he actually worked with the producer of the movie and said, why don't you start asking NASA if they'll just let us use the vomit comet?
Yeah. So they did for full body shots of full body weightlessness, they did the vomit comet. But then for
close-ups,
for close-ups, they just put them on like a seesaw.
Yes, right.
They would kind of raise them and lower them.
It's cool.
And then they had to just act weightless. Just the amount of work they put in to make this movie look the way it looks.
Yeah.
That's why it works, you know?
Yeah.
Because everybody was committed.
Yeah, I mean, you even had the actors. They were like spending a lot of time with the astronauts and really trying to not just get the terminology down, but like get the cadence and like if it's like an acronym, like what letter do you emphasize when you deliver the line? You know,
Sure,
it
yeah.
was like down to that detail of just wanting to get it right.
The one thing that we mentioned briefly, but we didn't mention who's responsible for it, is the James Horner score.
Oh yeah,
which is classic James Horner. Fits
definitely.
right in.
He also would have been. I mean, he did the Braveheart score too.
Oh, was he nominated against himself?
I don't know.
I know he was. I mean, he was nominated for this. I don't know if he got nominated for Braveheart. I'm sure he did.
Because it was the same year, right? Because
yeah. But there's one part, and maybe we can play it. Just the music felt so perfect, and it was when they first enter space. The launch sequence is over. We're in space, and the music is just beautiful, and
heavenly.
Yeah. Sets the tone in so many different ways that does the movie work without it? I wouldn't think so necessarily. And in some, true to form, sometimes it's overt. Like it's a really intrusive score.
It can be.
But then there's moments like that where it's just absolutely perfect for what's going on. And again, just the varied talents that were needed to pull this off.
Yeah.
To make us care about the humanity, but also just the beauty of space. All of the ways that you can admire NASA, just the technical achievement, the physical size of what's happening, the power of the engines, the genius of the mathematicians, the precision of the calculations, the ingenuity, but also the human connection that made it happen.
Yeah, and
the beauty of space,
the wonder of it, I think.
Yeah,
the
wonder of the wonder that drove all of it. And it also handles the switches, the shifts in feeling and tone really well. Like we've talked about how it just kind of will throw in some comic relief here and there that's never inappropriate or anything.
Yeah.
But
not like a guy farting out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, there's a lot of peeing.
Yeah. And vomit.
Yeah. But I mean, what I'm thinking of specifically is the scene where they shift from the beauty of the moon right into the terror of going dark.
Yeah. Oh,
on
yeah.
the other side.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not a shift that like breaks your neck. It's a shift that highlights the beauty and the terror. Like they highlight each other. I think what's probably pretty smart about that is driving home the point of the audience, like, it's a real danger. Floating away in space is a real thing that could happen. And can you imagine?
Honestly,
it's one of the scariest
I do
things.
not
It's
want
one
to
of the
imagine.
scariest things in my mind.
Yeah, it's like right up there with being buried alive.
Yeah, for sure. But then you get like the reality of like, okay, so they're not really in danger of floating away like the way he dreamed, but they're going dark. And it's not that long, but it probably felt like an eternity to Marilyn, to them, especially to Jack and Fred, who'd never been on the other side of the moon. It's just...
I could never do it.
No, I'm not cut out for space travel.
No, me neither.
I don't think I'm cut out for any part of NASA.
It would terrify me just to go through our atmosphere, I think.
That is a crazy thing to me.
Yeah.
Our atmosphere. Like, we don't need to go there. We're going to start, like, getting college dormy. But, like, just the idea that air, and it's presumably thinnest out where it meets space, is still dense enough that it could kill them if they hit it at the wrong angle.
Right. It's just you're sitting in a fireball. You are sitting inside a fireball, just barreling towards the earth.
Yeah. And then you stop burning up and you cool off.
And how much faith at that point do you have in the math?
Right.
We should bring it back to Hanks, though.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
I mean, the movie ends on Hanks, right? Like he gets the voiceover.
Yeah.
It's like following him as he's shaking hands and everything. And then it ends. And I even think It's like an understated performance because they're portraying an understated leadership. You know, to bring it back to Hanks.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think from what I understand, he is that kind of person on sets as well. Like, I think it was Forrest Gump where he typed a daily newsletter that highlighted different crew members and kept people
on a typewriter, I'm sure.
On a typewriter. But he handed it out to people, this daily newsletter from Tom Hanks that was the goings on, like the sort of thing that he did not need to do.
How do you think Hanks is able to pull off that sort of aw shucksness without it ever seeming insincere or like even cheesy, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I just think he's sincere.
He means it.
But he's also not naive, you know?
Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking, like, you know, who else could type up a newsletter on a typewriter?
Yeah, people weren't like this fucking
what the?
This guy.
What's he's gonna have us be doing trust falls soon?
Yeah,
and like
right,
doing,
yeah,
like, you know. But it never comes off that way with Hanks.
No,
I think he also does it with a sense of humor.
Yes,
there's a wink to it.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I think that's part of why his portrayal in this movie isn't cloying. Like, he has the sense of who is being honored here, you know? But also, the first we see him, he's cruising around in his Corvette. He's drunkenly
talking about the moon,
horsing around with his wife.
Right.
He was just very humanized before he ever had to be like the leader that he becomes in the movie.
Yeah.
And what made him connect with his wife is also what makes him sensitive to the needs of the people who he's working with when he's out in space and everything like that. I just don't know who else could play that.
Yeah. Well, I saw an interview with the real Jim Lovell, and he was talking about how Hollywood was starting to talk about maybe turning his book into a movie, and he thought that Kevin Costner looks a lot like me. I think he was kind of hoping for Kevin Costner. Now, could you imagine?
No. I can't. I'm trying to imagine how Kevin Costner would say, "Houston, we have a problem." Houston, we have a problem. I feel like that's how you'd say it. That was actually probably as good as I will ever get.
Yeah, so you don't have a Hanks, but you got a Costner.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Do you yield? That's also my Kevin Costner impression from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Also spot on.
And by God, we take it back.
This is kind of a side note. I think Nate Bargatze would probably have a good Kevin Costner impression.
He would. I guarantee it. Yeah.
Oh, man. That would have been awful.
Kevin Costner as Jim Lovell.
Jim Lovell.
Yeah, but you could see someone thinking
absolutely
that. Thinking
sure.
Kevin Costner is a great pick, but man, you never question Tom Hanks.
No, I mean, especially not in November.
No. All right. Well, I thought as we sort of start to wrap up this wonderful, successful T Hanksgiving, why don't we do something that we do occasionally on the show that's called a little bit of irrelevant IMDb trivia.
Yeah.
So this is where I don't know. Do you got something you want to share, Ryan, of something that I think our listeners would really appreciate knowing about Apollo 13?
Yeah, it'll make you want to go back and watch the movie again because I think we all know Jim Lovell is left-handed.
Of course, I'm left-handed, by the way.
I know.
Yeah. So I especially.
Do you remember the first time I saw you write with your left hand? I said like Jim Lovell.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said. I said like, you said
Jim Lovell.
At the same time we said Jim Lovell.
Yes, exactly.
So Jim Lovell is actually left-handed. Tom Hanks, and this is the wording of this trivia, Tom Hanks refused to write with his left hand for the movie.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising to me, you know?
You think a guy.
It's just...
really tarnishes.
In every other way.
That image.
So detail-oriented. What's he got against left-handers?
That's the real skeleton in his closet.
I suppose for the sake of, accuracy, if there wasn't some kind of simulation device for left-handedness, I could see where Hanks could be like, I'm just not going to do it justice.
Yeah, that's true.
You can tell. You can tell when an actor's faking it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just integrity then, you're saying?
Well, I have to believe that. I have to believe it's integrity and not just some kind of animosity towards left-handed people.
I really don't want that to be true.
No, I don't think we need to because, he obviously had a lot of respect for Jim Lovell. But you do wonder, was that before or after he found out he was left-handed?
We all know Jim Lovell's left-handed. There's no way Hanks didn't know.
Yeah, so I guess it's just, when you're an actor, you got to make choices,
Yeah.
and this is one where it's just like we're
Where
gonna
are
let
you gonna devote your energy,
we're gonna
right?
let a little Hollywood magic kind of ignore the left-handed part.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard not to see it when I watch the movie again.
Absolutely.
Still a good piece of trivia, though. Thank you for sharing that, Ryan.
Yeah. I thank you to whoever wrote that.
Yeah. I got one for you here. It's a short one.
Okay.
But I think it's really good for us to know this. I think it's going to really kind of add a little bit of joviality to the podcast.
So it really brought us down with that.
Yeah, no. So let's
bring it back up.
Let's bring it back. Like, this is really something here.
Okay.
Ron Howard, director Ron Howard
of Apollo
13.
Okay.
Apollo 13. Did you know he liked to refer to his stars as astronauts?
That's not the word. It's astronauts.
But he, for the stars,
because they're actors.
Because they're actors.
Oh my gosh!
But here's the thing.
That is funny.
Referred to his stars as astronauts on the shoot as a joke.
Oh, good.
Because
if it were serious, that'd be a big mistake.
No, it'd be a huge mistake. It's just like
for a big time Hollywood director.
You'd think the producers of the movie would be sitting there thinking,
"Boy, they'd be sweating."
Boy, they'd be
Who
like,
did we hire?
At some point, someone's going to have to tell Ron Howard they're astronauts,
right? Not
astronauts. But I bet
he probably said, "I'm just joking."
He probably did that. He probably was like, a producer kind of said, like, "Dude, Ron, I don't know if you know this, but like, you're not sounding smart here."
No, Howard's a comedic guy. He knew to say that before it ever got to that point.
As a joke.
I said that as a joke, guys.
Yeah.
I bet. I can hear him saying it.
Yeah. Hey.
That's good.
Astronauts, get to the set. Oh my God.
They probably really chuckled every time.
I bet. I mean, it's a little bit of wordplay.
Yeah.
But you can't get better than that.
That's great.
As a joke. I mean, he had to come up with something to sort of lighten the mood after everyone realized that Tom Hanks was just not going to do the left-handed thing.
Just his repeated
refusal.
That's good leadership.
Yeah.
Wow.
Guys, we're all astronauts here.
Yeah, right.
There's your irrelevant trivia for this episode.
Thank you. Wow.
And now you know that.
That was good. I needed that balm after the burn of the Tom Hanks being so
just obstinate.
Yeah.
Really?
It seems. I wonder if he would feel the same way, because this was 95. I mean,
maybe he could have gotten some pointers from Daniel Day-Lewis.
I would like to think so.
I mean, that guy did it with his foot.
His left foot.
His left foot.
Yeah. Now this is relevant trivia that I didn't see in IMDb.
This isn't our thing, but if you want to say it, I guess
I was just thinking, we are now further away from Apollo 13 coming out as a movie than Apollo 13 was from the actual incident. 25 years from one to the other, and about 30 years now.
And we still haven't gone back to the moon.
Still haven't, yeah.
All right, well, hey, this is always
true T. Hanks giving fashion.
This is so wonderful to talk even more about Tom Hanks.
So is this a 5-star movie for you?
Oh, that's right. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think it's a 4.5 for me.
4.5. I see. I think it's probably more of a 4 for me. But man, solid.
Is it the left-handed thing?
I mean, I would have gone 4 either way. The left-handed thing's not helping though.
Yeah.
The astronauts kind of keeps it there though. It's at 4.
Oh boy. For some reason, for everything I said about it, it still doesn't feel 5 stars to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Very rewatchable.
Absolutely.
And I don't think I'm going to wait as long next
probably
time.
A great Thanksgiving watch.
Yeah.
If you celebrate that holiday in addition to T. Hanksgiving.
But still best buds, even if it's a little 4.5 star quibble.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about what we're going to do next episode after we take a little break?
That's right.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we are taking off December.
Right.
And then we'll kick it up in the new year.
Right. And we have a couple ideas kicking around for what we're going to do. We don't know if we want to do another year-long kind of theme like we did this year. We were watching movies from 2023.
Yeah, with the exception of Apollo 13.
Apollo 13.
Yeah.
We got some ideas. Maybe we'll try some of those out. There's always movies we wish we could see again, or we know we need to see again, or something like that. We've talked a lot about that kind of like glut of years where we just watched everything that we could, and maybe we weren't really paying attention.
Maybe they deserve another look.
Yeah, or we're 20 years older and
they deserve another
intelligent, like wizened.
I was going to say
cynical, world-weary, wrinkled, tired.
Tired was probably what I was going to say. Yeah, a tired look. I just can't think of a more captivating podcast theme than two 40-year-olds giving a tired look at a movie.
Yeah, that's what's generating the clicks.
I can see it on TikTok now.
Yeah. So we'll think about that, and we will let you know when the next episode comes out.
We'll try to keep you informed, up to date.
Yeah.
So don't worry.
As you need to know.
Yeah.
Much like Ron Howard is a master of exposition, so will we try to be.
So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to bask in the last of this T. Hanksgiving episode.
Yeah.
And we're going to wish you a very, very happy holidays and all of those festivities as they come around while we take a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And relax and rest. And this is going to be that time of year when everyone's cranking out the Oscar movies.
That's
and so, hopefully we'll catch some good films
hopefully
between
in
now
the
and
new
then.
year we've got a solid list of movies that we're going to be working through.
Yeah. Who knows?
And hopefully you do too.
Maybe that'll be the first episode. Is just us talking about the year in movie. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what we feel.
Don't hold us to anything.
Don't hold us to anything ever.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Partially because we don't know what we're doing, but also because, we always break new ground. So if you hold us to stuff, we can't keep breaking new ground.
We are not responsible for what happens
untethered.
when you try to hold us to stuff. Boy, will you learn your lesson.
And it'll be a hard one.
Oh yeah. But if you want to hold us to something, there's lots of ways.
Yes. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, our past episodes. Dig through those archives. To listen to or comment on this or any of our past episodes, you can find us at canwestillbefriends.net or email us at feedback@canwestillbefriends.net. You can find us on Facebook at Can We Still Be Friends Podcast or Instagram and Threads at Can We Still Be Friends Pod. And if you'd like to leave us a voice message and be featured on the podcast, email us a voice memo.
As always, we'd love it if you go to subscribe and leave us a rating or a review at Apple Podcasts. Those ratings really help spread the word about our show. Can We Still Be Friends is written and produced by Ryan Ebling and Nate Goss and edited by Nate Goss. Thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time.